2 weeks ago, on Sunday, October 19th, something rather extraordinary happened at the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. During broad daylight, 30 minutes after the museum opened for the day, and as hundreds of visitors streamed inside, 8 pieces of France's crown jewel collection, valued at an estimated $102 million, but actually priceless when considering historical value, were stolen in less than 8 minutes. I don't often talk about current events on this show. I'm usually covering events centuries after they happened, but this one deals with history, and it deals with history that I now find myself unable to stop thinking about. My mind races back to the Mona Lisa episode and the 1911 theft of the Mona Lisa from the Louvre, how that was possible, how this was possible. It fixates on the pieces themselves, these extravagant, ostentatious manifestations of the wealth of the elite. Who were these women who sported such opulence? What gave them the right? And it gets stuck, my mind. It gets stuck on another question that not enough people seem to be asking. Where did these gems come from originally? I promise you they didn't come from France. So where did they come from, and at whose expense? And possibly the question that haunts me the most: can you really steal something that was already stolen? Let's fix that. Hello, I'm Shayla Fontaine, and this is History Fix, where I discuss surprising true stories from history you won't be able to stop thinking about. I know you guys don't come to me for current events, but we can't not talk about this. Plus, there's a lot of history to discuss here too, and there's a lot of deep ethical questions that we need to ask ourselves concerning that history. So we're going to get a little philosophical today, but we're also going to talk about a jewel heist and a bunch of princesses. So, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be good. Let's talk about the heist itself first, because I cannot get enough. I brought it up to my husband, Joey, soon after it happened. I was like, did you hear about this Louvre jewel heist? Because we went to the Louvre on our honeymoon. We have these sort of like shared memories from there. It's something, that I thought he might actually find at least a little bit interesting, even though he hates the news and history. And he was like, yeah, I heard about it. Haven't really read up on it, that kind of thing. So I filled him in a little bit, because y'all know I read up on it hard. And you want to know what he said? The first thing he said, without even really thinking about it at all, the first thing he said, good for them. Leave it to Joey. No, we don't know who these thieves were, right? We don't know why they stole the jewelry. That sentiment is probably dead wrong. But I appreciate how Joey always leaves room for the alternate perspective. And he might not actually be too out of line here. So what happened? Well, at 9:30 a.m., the morning of Sunday, October 19th, a utility truck of sorts with like this extendable ladder with a mechanized lift, what you might call a cherry picker. These are used in Paris all the time for like moving furniture and stuff into apartments, because a lot of the apartment buildings in Paris don't have elevators. So this utility truck, this ladder truck, it drove up to a second-story window of the Louvre Museum in Paris. 30 minutes after the museum opened for the day. Opens at 9, this truck drives up at 9:30. Now, this isn't that crazy or out of the ordinary, right? This wouldn't have looked that crazy to passerbys. This looks like a maintenance truck doing maintenance on the very old windows of this building, right? You'd sort of expect to see that. And it's such a large operation. You have to understand the museum itself is massive. It's absolutely massive. It's such a large operation, and there's so many people involved, so many moving parts. No one knows all the things. No one person can possibly know all the things that are going on with this museum, when there's scheduled maintenance and when there isn't, where and when, and everyone knows their little piece, They know the part that they need to turn their cog, right? So everyone's just like, oh yeah, maintenance truck, old windows, duh, right? So they drive up, they park under this window, which happens to be the window to the Gallery of Apollo, where France's crown jewels are on display. There's 4 total guys, we think. 2 of the guys who we're pretty sure were wearing like neon vests, think like a vest you'd wear if you're doing road work or like directing traffic or something. So they're not hiding. They're literally wearing neon. These vests are designed so that those people will be seen by like passing vehicles and stuff, right? But they're trying to look like they're supposed to be there. Now they do have their faces covered. They have balaclavas on, covering their faces. But that kind of makes sense too, considering they're going to be using power tools. They go up the ladder lift thing with these power tools. They have angle grinders, which according to Andrew Chang in a video for CBS News, can cut through virtually anything depending on what kind of cutting disc you use. These 2 guys, they use these angle grinders to cut through the window. They like cut the pane of glass out of the window and into the Gallery of Apollo. And then they climb through, right? They cut the pane of glass out, they climb through into the gallery. Now, this is crazy to me because the museum was open. You know, there were very likely people in that gallery at the time, which, like, can you imagine? But, you know, the neon vests, the power tools, the ladder truck, thieves don't wear neon vests, right? Maintenance men wear neon vests. Maintenance men do all of these things. So I imagine even then, as they're cutting through the glass and climbing through, I imagine people were just kind of like, oh, weird. You know, I guess they're replacing the windows today. Didn't think they'd do that while the museum was open. You know, your brain is always trying to make sense of things, and we're always trying to go with the most logical explanation. Breaking into the crown jewel room at the Louvre with angle grinders in broad daylight in 2025 is not a logical explanation. There's no way that's happening right now, is what your brain is telling you. But it was. It's what was happening. So they climb through into the gallery. According to BBC, there were guards in the room, and the guards did react, but threatened with the angle grinders, there really wasn't anything that they could do. And this initially confused me so much because I thought museum guards were basically police officers. No, not at all. Totally different thing. The security guards inside the Louvre are unarmed civilian employees. Their job is to just monitor the galleries, make sure there's no funny business going on, right? No one doing anything cray-cray. And then if there is something like that happening, they trigger alarms. They watch, they trigger alarms, they help guests evacuate the museum safely if necessary, they keep the guests safe. They don't have guns or tasers or even like the little police BD stick baton things, whatever they're called. They are completely unarmed. This was news to me. I don't know why I didn't realize. I don't go to a lot of museums, to be honest, but this is news to me. There are armed policemen outside of the museum, but none of them are stationed full-time inside the museum. And you might be thinking, you know, well, if the security guards just had guns, this never would have happened. And honestly, that's probably a very American way of thinking. People from less gun-happy countries listening right now are probably like, no, that's not what I was thinking, actually. That's where American minds go, I think. The reason the museum security guards don't have guns is because human lives are more important than artwork and historic artifacts. If the guards were to have confronted these thieves with their guns, it probably would have led to a shootout in a crowded public place, which is not ideal, right? And because of this risk factor of the guards having guns and these shootouts happening, French labor laws and insurance regulations prohibit the security guards from having guns or being armed at all. Their job is to trigger alarms and to get the visitors out. Then they wait for the actually armed police officers to rush in and do their thing. The problem here is that this happened so fast and the Louvre is so dang big that by the time the police officers arrived, the thieves were long gone. Okay, so they come in through the window. Alarms are likely already going off at this point. The guards are just getting everyone out. Yes, letting it happen. They can't do anything to stop it. They aren't actually even supposed to do anything to stop it. The two thieves then used the angle grinders to cut out the glass in the display cases and remove 9 pieces of jewelry and regalia from the crown jewels collection. And we'll get into those in more detail soon. They're inside for 4 minutes total, and then they head back out the window, down the ladder, they escape on motorbikes. The whole thing, from first pulling up in the truck to escaping on the motorbikes, took less than 8 minutes total. Now, they can't escape in the truck, obviously, because that's way too noticeable, hence the motorbikes. They do actually take a minute to try to set fire to the truck, probably just to try to destroy any kind of forensic evidence that might be left behind. After they leave, the police rush in, the guards, the museum guys, they rush in, the museum's closed, everybody's been kicked out, and they go assess the damage. They find that 9 pieces are missing from their cases. But they find one of them, they actually recover one of those 9 pieces near the lift truck, like down on the sidewalk, that the thief had either dropped or discarded. Probably dropped. I don't think he would discard this thing. Pretty sure he dropped it by accident as he was leaving in a hurry. So it is a crown with 8 golden eagles. And if you're watching the video version, by the way, you're seeing a picture of this crown. This would be a good episode to watch on YouTube or Patreon because it does help to actually see these things and these people that I'm going to be talking about. So it's a crown. It has 8 golden eagles, 56 emeralds, and over 1,300 diamonds. And it's actually the most valuable of what was stolen. It's not the most valuable in the collection, though. That's the Regent diamond, which is worth over $60 million. It was not stolen. Still there, still safe. So that's interesting, though. It's interesting that they left that one behind. Anyway, the thieves appear to have dropped this crown, their most valuable spoil, as they were making their getaway, and it's recovered. It was damaged, but it was recovered. The other 8 pieces appear to have been successfully stolen, and we're going to talk about them soon. But first, I just want to compare this heist with the stealing of the Mona Lisa back in 1911, because they're both just so far-fetched, like crazy that they were able to pull this off. But at the same time, they seem to have been pulled off actually very easily, way too easily. So if you listen to episode 43 about the Mona Lisa, highly recommend. I talked about when the Mona Lisa, arguably the most famous piece of artwork in existence, a Renaissance painting by Leonardo da Vinci, was successfully stolen by an Italian maintenance man named Vincenzo Perugia. Now, Perugia used to work in the Louvre. He used to do maintenance there. He knew the museum well. He knew how to get around. He knew how security worked. He knew about the hours and when people would be where, and he used all of that to his advantage. So he goes to the Louvre on a Monday, which he knows is a cleaning day. The museum is closed. Plus, he knows there's only 12 guards on duty instead of the usual 160 that are there when the museum's open. He acts like he's there to clean the museum because it's cleaning day. And he's a maintenance man, right? Maintenance man, familiar? It's basically the same MO that the Louvre jewel thieves used. Okay, so he walks straight to the gallery, waltzes straight to the gallery where the Mona Lisa is hanging, and he just popped it off the wall. It was just like hanging on some hooks. He just pops it off the hooks on the wall. That's how easy it was. He ends up hiding it under his painter's smock. And then he hops on a bus. And it's not like a canvas that he could just roll up. The Mona Lisa is painted on a wooden panel. It's a rectangle. It's not very big, but it's hard and it's rectangular. So he has this under his smock. He hops on a bus, the wrong bus actually, gets off, gets in a horse-drawn carriage, takes her on home. So we have some similarities here. Now, the museum was closed when Perugia did this. It was open during the jewel heist, but both thieves pretended that they were supposed to be there. They didn't sneak in all black and hide in the shadows at night and hope not to be seen. They expected to be seen, and they dressed accordingly. What would someone who was actually allowed to do this look like? What would they be wearing? A smock? Right? If you're cleaning the Louvre, maybe a yellow vest if you're repairing windows. Guys, not trying to tell you how to rob a museum or anything, But the best way to get away with literally anything is to pretend like you're supposed to be doing it. Confidence, baby. Very few people question that kind of confidence. We're going to come back to Perugia's motives for stealing the Mona Lisa because I find them very interesting and insightful. But first, let's look at what jewelry, what pieces the thieves stole, and specifically at the historical significance of these 8 pieces. What was their story? The Mona Lisa, by the way, I'm assuming everyone knows, but in case you're like Googling frantically right now because I left you hanging, the Mona Lisa was amazingly recovered 2 years later in 1913 and was returned to the Louvre, where it remains on display today, but much better protected. I mean, I guess I thought so anyway. Now I'm questioning everything. I don't know. Okay, back to the jewelry heist. Let's start with the emerald pieces because I'm going to try to go chronologically here. Quick side note, as I try to explain who wore this jewelry and when, the French line of succession is crazy confusing, mostly thanks to the French Revolution and the political chaos that plagued the decades that followed. There is so much upheaval, but I'm going to try to walk you through that nice and easy. Don't worry. Also, sorry again about the horrible French pronunciation that I'm sure you're about to hear. My mouth just can't do it. I don't know. I keep ending up in France. It's just really hard for me. So the emerald pieces that were stolen included a necklace and matching earrings. This isn't like a quaint little necklace with like a little emerald bauble on it. This is a chunky monster of a thing, dripping with big old emeralds and absolutely covered in diamonds. 32 massive emeralds and over 1,000 diamonds on this necklace. And once again, if you're watching the video version of this on either YouTube or Patreon, then you're getting to see images of all these pieces. Go you. This set belonged to a woman by the name of Marie Louise, who just so happened to be the second wife of French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. Marie Louise was the daughter of Holy Roman Emperor Francis II and also the Austrian Archduchess. So she was this very eligible bachelorette when she married Napoleon in 1810. Shortly after he divorced his first wife, Josephine, for not being able to bear him an heir. So what is France like in 1810? This is after the French Revolution, which took place starting in 1789. That's episodes 90 and 91. Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, King and Queen of France, were beheaded. The monarchy is done away with. And then for the next 11 years after that, France is ruled by a series of committees and assemblies and consulates, one of which Napoleon was actually part of. And his role as the first consul from 1799 to 1804 transformed into his role as all-powerful Emperor of France starting in 1805. This reign would last around a decade before the Bourbons, the old dynasty of Louis XVI, the monarchy, was restored. It was actually, they brought the monarchy back. Even after all the craziness of the French Revolution, they brought the monarchy back. Napoleon was exiled and imprisoned on an island and died, possibly of arsenic poisoning from the green wallpaper in his bedroom. That's one theory anyway. I have a mini fix on that. Head on over to Patreon. It's called Poisoned or Not Poisoned. That one's a lot of fun. Anyway, in the time that he was emperor, Napoleon married Marie Louise, and he had this emerald necklace and earrings made for her. There was originally a tiara as well, and that matched, that had the emeralds in it. And then he also had this crazy diamond necklace made for her, and I believe that is what she's wearing in any portraits that you've probably seen of her, or what you're seeing right now if you're watching the video, because this is a different necklace. It's not green for one, and it's missing like the little fan-shaped diamond pieces between the dangly bits. These do appear to be the emerald earrings in this portrait, though. I don't know, maybe the artist just did a really bad job. Maybe he ran out of green paint. I don't know. Didn't want to get arsenic poisoning. Who knows? Anyway, this set belonged to Empress Marie Louise. When Napoleon abdicated the throne, he was forced to abdicate the throne and was exiled. They had to hand over the crown jewels back to the Bourbons, back to the monarchy, which was taking back over. But Marie Louise was allowed to keep her personal jewelry collection, of which this set was part. So she got to keep the emerald necklace and earrings and tiara, even as she fled France back to Austria. She bequeathed this set to her cousin Leopold II when she died, and his descendants eventually sold it to a jeweler that sold off the emeralds from the tiara actually and replaced them with turquoise. The Smithsonian has that now. It's now a turquoise tiara instead of an emerald tiara. And they also have the diamond necklace that Napoleon had made for her. The necklace, the emerald necklace and the emerald earrings that were stolen were left intact, and they were sold to the Louvre in 2004 for $4 million. Okay, next we're going to go to the sapphire pieces that were stolen. This included a necklace, a tiara, and one of a pair of earrings. They left the other earring. It was still in the case, just haste, I assume. So these are made of these big, giant, round blue sapphires surrounded by thousands of diamonds. Think Princess Diana, now Kate Middleton's engagement ring. I know you've seen it. Think that, but like on steroids. 24 sapphires and 1,083 diamonds in all. So who did these beauties belong to? A few different ladies, actually, but mostly Marie Amélie. According to ArtNet, quote, Marie Amélie de Bourbon-Cecil straddled both sides of the French Revolution. She was both the niece of Marie Antoinette through her mother and the aunt of Napoleon I's second wife, Empress Marie Louise, through her marriage to Louis Philippe, who became king in 1830 following a revolt against the tyranny of Charles X. She became queen of the French, and she had the jewels to show for it, end quote. I'm realizing I forgot to look up a lot of these pronunciations, so bear with me extra hard this time around. Okay, so let's back it up a little bit. Let's fill in some gaps here. Let's go back to where we sort of left off. Napoleon gets exiled, right? He dies, green wallpaper, arsenic, whatever. The Bourbon dynasty takes back over with Louis XVIII, who was Louis XVI's brother. So the brother of the beheaded pre-revolution king. And you may be wondering, well, what about Louis XVII? It can't go 16th, 18th. Louis XVII was the son of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. He died at 10 years old in prison. Sad, I know. So the Bourbons take back over, monarchy restored with Louis XVIII. He dies without any heirs. Other brother, Charles X, takes over. Charles is a bit of a tyrant. No one likes him. He gets overthrown in 1830 by the July Revolution, goes into exile. I told you guys. Chaos. France, you crazy. That's technically the end of the Bourbons. Next up is Louis Philippe, who was Charles' cousin, but he comes from the House of Orleans, not Bourbon. So he starts the Orleans dynasty, which is literally just him. Not much of a dynasty because it switches to presidents after that. Anyway, all that to say that the wearer of the sapphire set, Marie Amélie, was the wife of Louis Philippe, technically the last king of France. The last to be called king before it switched to presidents. So this also makes Marie Amélie the last queen of France. But before they were worn by Marie Amélie, the last queen of France, they belonged to a name I don't even want to attempt, but will attempt to say, and I did look this one up, so this is actually me trying as hard as I can. So before they belonged to Marie Amélie, they belonged to Hortense de Beauharnais. Hortense de Beauharnais. That's got to be close. Hortense was, Hortense was Napoleon's stepdaughter. So she was the daughter of his first wife, Josephine. Remember, he divorced her because she couldn't bear him any heirs. She actually had 2 children already before she married him from like a previous marriage. And this belonged to her daughter, Napoleon's stepdaughter, Hortense. We don't exactly know where this set came from. It's believed that it may have been a gift to her from her mother Josephine, and that it may have been made actually by using stones, repurposing stones originally from the collection of Marie Antoinette. But it ends up with Marie Amélie, who most famously wore it, as seen in this portrait if you're watching the video. Now, Marie Amélie, you may be noticing if you're looking at the portrait right now, she was older. She was 48 years old when she became queen. Remember, she was the aunt of Napoleon's second wife, Marie-Louise, the emerald jewelry wearer, who ruled 20 years before her. So she's older than Marie-Louise, but ruling France well after her, 20 years later. They aren't making it easy for us, guys. The sapphire set passed on to Marie Amélie's granddaughter, Isabella de Orleans, and remained in the family until the Louvre acquired it in 1985. We don't know the jeweler that made it. There are no recognizable signature markings, but the Louvre called it, quote, technical perfection. So, rip to technical perfection, I guess. And that brings us to the final 3 stolen pieces: the pearl tiara, diamond bow brooch, and diamond reliquary brooch, all belonging to Empress Eugenie. Eugenie de Montijo was born into Spanish nobility in 1825. She married President Louis Napoleon, who would later transform into Emperor Napoleon III. So back up to Louis Philippe, Sapphire Lady's husband, right? He ended up having to abdicate the throne and go into exile too. It's like everybody at this point, in 1848. It switches to presidents now. No more kings. Remember, he was the last king. That starts with the first official president of France, Louis Napoleon. But Louis Napoleon, here's something you need to know about him. He was related to the mighty Napoleon Bonaparte. He was his nephew, the son of Napoleon's brother and stepdaughter. I know, guys. I know this is confusing. Napoleon's stepdaughter, Hortense, original wearer of the sapphire set, married Napoleon's brother, and their son was Louis Napoleon. So here's what happened. Louis Napoleon was first legit democratically elected president of France. He comes to the end of his term. He can't run for president again. He's hit his term limit. No, sir. Those rules don't apply to the Napoleon's nephew. Rules can be changed. This actually terrifies me a little bit because I wouldn't put it past another Napoleon-esque world leader today to do something like this. But anyway, Louis Napoleon, he doesn't want to stop being the president of France because of something silly like a term limit. So he staged a coup in 1851 to seize power. He then held a popular election that approved a new constitution that made him Emperor of France in 1852, just like dear old Uncle Napoleon I. So screw presidential term limits, I'll just be emperor instead. It's fine. He has the name for it already. President Louis Napoleon transforms into Emperor Napoleon III. Okay. Emperor Napoleon III married this Spanish princess, Eugenie de Montijo, in 1853, and he showered her with precious gems. It's like a throwback to Napoleon I days, right? Where he's giving Marie-Louise this amazing emerald set and this crazy diamond necklace and all this stuff. He's just kind of like trying to be his uncle here. So he showered her with these precious gems as well. He had the pearl tiara made for her that was stolen. It had 200 pearls and around 3,000 diamonds on it. The pearls were repurposed from something in the collection of Marie-Louise, we believe, with Napoleon's second wife and wearer of the emerald set that was also stolen. So Eugenie's brooch, which is shaped like a bow and just like absolutely covered in diamonds, that was stolen as well. That used to be part of the buckle of a diamond-encrusted belt that was made for Eugenie. So this belt had more than 4,000 diamonds on it. And we know that it was on display at the 1855 Paris Exposition, and that Eugenie wore it during a visit by England's Queen Victoria, also in 1855. And she also wore it to the baptism of her son in 1856. In the 1860s, Eugenie was like kind of sick of this heavy, gaudy belt situation, and she had it refashioned into this bow with this cascade of ribbons coming down, all just completely covered in diamonds from the belt. The third piece of Eugenie's jewelry that was stolen was a diamond reliquary brooch. So a reliquary brooch was designed to hold a sacred relic, which could be, like a piece of the Shroud of Turin, part of the crown of thorns that Jesus wore, bones or like bodily remains of a saint, that kind of thing. A reliquary brooch has a place to store a relic. We know that Eugenie was very religious. She was Spanish, right? Relics are super Catholic. That checks out. The brooch is made of 94 diamonds that were repurposed into a brooch. The diamonds originally belonged to King Louis XIV, builder of Versailles. So we know this guy was over the top. And then they were reworked into the brooch, which was supposed to store a relic because it has the word reliquary engraved in the pin that was used to like attach it to wear it. But experts could never really find a place to actually put a relic. So who knows? Theoretically reliquary. The final piece, the ninth piece that was stolen but actually recovered, dropped next to the ladder truck, the crown, the most valuable piece taken, that also belonged to Eugenie. And that was that crown with the gold eagles and the emeralds and the diamonds. Girl raked it in. Napoleon III was trying to bring back the glory days for sure. Make France great again, I guess. But does it work? No, it does not work. Just like his uncle, Napoleon III is overthrown. He is forced to abdicate. He goes into exile. Same story all over again with all these guys because they all sucked. Try a woman. Just try it. It can't be much worse. So what happens to all this bling when the Second Empire collapses? Well, the Third Republic that came next, now we're back to presidents, they ordered that the crown jewels all be auctioned off in 1887. The diamond bow brooch was bought by Caroline Astor of New York. The Astors were like this very, very wealthy American family at that time. Their fortune came from the fur trade and then eventually got like funneled into New York City real estate and just kind of blew up. Caroline Astor was the mother of John Jacob Astor IV, who actually died on the Titanic. So she bought Eugenie's diamond bow brooch at auction in 1887. It later passed into the possession of various English aristocrats before being bought by the Louvre in 2008 for an estimated $10 million. The pearl tiara was also auctioned off in 1887 and remained in someone's private collection until the Louvre bought it in 1992. And they actually got the reliquary brooch directly, the Louvre got it directly from that 1887 auction. They bought it at the auction. Okay, so just to recap here, we have essentially three collections that were stolen. The emerald necklace and earrings belonging to Marie Louise, wife of Napoleon Bonaparte. The sapphire tiara, necklace, and one earring that belonged to Marie Amélie, wife of Louis Philippe, the last king of France. And the pearl tiara, diamond bow brooch, and diamond reliquary brooch that all belonged to Eugenie de Montijo, wife of Napoleon III, wannabe second emperor of France. All stolen. Gone. Probably will not be recovered. I mean, I hope they are for historical value, but it is very, very rare to recover stolen jewelry like this. Because here's the thing, you can't just like put that on Facebook Marketplace, right? You can't sell these things because they're so recognizable. Everyone knows they're stolen. Everyone's looking for them. That's how Vincenzo Perugia got caught. He tried to sell the Mona Lisa to an Italian antique dealer in Florence, and the guy was like, are you serious, dude? and turned him in. So you can't sell this stuff as is. Someone could collect it, I guess, and just like covet it secretly forever. But what's the point of that? If someone is trying to liquidate this loot, if they're trying to make money off this heist, they have to make the pieces unrecognizable first. They have to break them apart. They have to recut the gems. They have to repurpose them into other pieces of jewelry, and then they have to sell that jewelry. So that means that before too long, jewelry like this that's stolen ceases to exist. It dissipates. Poof. It's other things now. It's here, it's there. Who knows where it is? It's gone. You can't really do that with paintings, right? You can't sell off Mona Lisa's nose to one guy and her eye to somebody else. She has no value once you disassemble her. I mean, honestly, she probably definitely still would, but you know what I mean? It's not the same thing. Now, I come back to Joey's sort of knee-jerk reaction that he had when I brought this up to him. Good for them. He said, good for them. Why? Why would that be his reaction? And that brings us to the topic of ethics. Joey is clearly looking at this. I love how we're always studying my husband. By the way, this is fun. He has no idea that we do this. He has no idea that we talk about him as much as we do. But from that reaction, good for them. He's clearly looking at this as like a Robin Hood situation, right? Steal from the rich to feed the poor mentality. No, I don't think the jewel thieves have any intention of helping poor people with this, and I don't believe he does either. That'd be amazing. That's not how these things go. So this is almost more of a sticking it to the man evolution of the Robin Hood mentality, right? They've taken so much from all of us for so long, this elite group, the aristocracy, the kings, the emperors, the tyrants. Let's take something back. It doesn't matter what happens to it or who gets it. They just can't have it anymore, right? Sticking it to the man. Now, I'm not saying it's ever ethical to steal, but let's examine the ethics behind the very existence of pieces of jewelry like this. Where did these gems come from? How did these world leaders acquire them in order to bedazzle their wives? Well, we know many of them were repurposed. The reliquary brooch diamonds came from Louis XIV. We think the sapphire set was repurposed from the collection of Marie Antoinette. But where did those guys get the pieces? Let's take a quick look at the various ways that crown jewels like this come into the possession of the world leaders. Sometimes they're acquired as dowry through diplomatic marriages, right? You marry a foreign princess, she brings her big old diamond with her, whatever. But still, it's just like, she's just from Austria, right? Where did Austria get that diamond? That doesn't answer the question. For example, the gems that were stolen came from outside of Europe originally. The sapphires came from Sri Lanka. The emeralds came from Colombia. The pearls came from Asia. There were a lot of diamonds, but we know that the big $60 million Regent diamond that actually wasn't stolen, we know that came from India. So virtually all of these gems originated from outside of Europe. Some of them were likely traded or purchased, but a lot of them were probably acquired through some form of conquest or colonization. So let's talk about that. These gems were traded between European countries a lot as dowry or gifts or exchanges or whatever. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly which country was responsible for taking it from its place of origin. But they're pretty much all colonizers to some degree in Europe, so it's all the same. A lot of these gems that ended up in European crown jewel collections were sourced from regions that were under European control at the time. Sri Lanka, where the sapphires came from, was colonized by the Portuguese, Dutch, and then British between 1505 and 1948. That's almost 450 years under European control, if you're counting. Colombia, where the emeralds came from, was colonized by the Spanish between 1499 and 1819, 320 years. India, where a lot of the diamonds probably came from. My goodness, Europe really just had its way with India. India was colonized by, ready? Portugal, France, Denmark, the Netherlands, Sweden, Austria, and then Great Britain between the years of 1498 and 1947, 450 years. It's really no wonder European monarchs have so many dang diamonds from India, thousands and thousands between all 8 pieces stolen from the Louvre. So what does this mean? Can we delude ourselves into thinking that these European countries boosted the economies of the places they colonized by paying fair prices for their gems? That's not really how colonization and conquest work, unfortunately. The way colonization and conquest work is that you go to a different place outside of your own country, a place where other people are already living, it's their country, and then you say, all of this, everything you have, it's ours now, and we get to decide what to do with it. It's not exactly stealing in like the traditional sense. It's a bit of a spin-off from stealing based on this really unequal power dynamic. Even when these gems were, air quotes, fairly purchased or traded, we still have to consider how that imbalance of power came into play. It's still happening. I touched on this in episode 35 about diamonds. Whole bloody wars have been started over diamonds in countries in Africa so that a handful of already wealthy Europeans can get even wealthier. This was similar to Vincenzo Perugia's motive for stealing the Mona Lisa back in 1911, all of this. He was Italian. He was an Italian immigrant living in France and working at the Louvre, and he was disgusted by the number of Italian masterpieces that the Louvre had, that France had. He felt that that artwork belonged back in Italy, where it had come from, where it had been unfairly taken. Napoleon Bonaparte had conquered and ruled Italy during his time as Emperor of France in the early 1800s. And during that time, he had stolen much of that artwork from Italy, specifically for the Louvre Museum. He straight up stole them, looting churches and palaces and private collections. And Perugia wanted to see that artwork returned to Italy. It was a principal thing for him. But most of it was way too big to smuggle out under his painter's smock, right? He picked the Mona Lisa because it's small. It's just 30 inches by 21 inches. Not because it was stolen from Italy by Napoleon. It wasn't. It did originate in Italy. Da Vinci was from Florence, but he willingly moved to France and brought the Mona Lisa with him, where he left it when he died with no instructions to like return it to Italy or anything like that. So not the best choice possibly for Perugia to prove his point, but really the only Italian artwork small enough to steal. And then you have to look at, a lot of the gems in the stolen pieces were repurposed from early crown jewels. They came from, like, there were diamonds from Louis XIV, and there were gems from Marie Antoinette's collection. And even if they are purchasing these gems fairly, how are they purchasing them? With whose money? Where did Louis XIV's money come from? Where did Marie Antoinette's money come from? It came from taxes. It came from French people, many of whom were living in extreme poverty at that time. It was money that went to the government, to the king, who was then supposed to use it to provide for the people, except he didn't. He bought diamonds with it. He built palaces like Versailles. It's the whole reason for the French Revolution, really, in the first place. And so it's kind of crazy to me that they're still doing it after that. Napoleon with the emeralds and the diamonds for Marie-Louise, the sapphires for Hortense, how quickly it went right back to that. Do you know how many French people you could feed with even just one of those diamonds? And there were collectively thousands and thousands of them between these 8 stolen pieces, just sitting up there, doing nothing on these ladies' heads and around their necks and dangling from their ears. It's disgusting. And it's really no wonder that someone would have a good for them reaction to that kind of thing being stolen. But we have to keep in mind that they no longer belonged to this elite aristocratic royalty that had them commissioned. Remember, the French government had auctioned off Eugenie's pearl tiara and diamond brooches with most of the remaining crown jewels in 1887. And they did this for all the right reasons. They did this to raise money for social welfare, to help people, to finally turn those diamonds into food so that people could eat. And they also did this to get rid of anything that symbolized the old corrupt monarchy, which is controversial, right? It's the same type of argument that we have in the US over like tearing down plantation houses and statues of Confederate leaders. Do we erase it? Do we preserve it? How do we best learn from it? How do we avoid repeating it? The Louvre eventually acquired what they could through purchases from private collectors or families who had inherited the earlier pieces. And they were displayed as a way of preserving French history and heritage and craftsmanship. I mean, these are works of art, right? Technical perfection. And so when you look at it that way, it's not good for them. It's a tragic loss for the French people and the world, really. These are irreplaceable. But then, in my mind, spirals, you have to look at the Louvre. Why does the Louvre get to have them? How did the Louvre get them? Like, the Louvre is an empress or a queen. Why does the Louvre get to wear these gems and show them off to the world? Who's behind that? Where does the Louvre get the money that it uses to purchase these things? Well, the French government funds it a little bit, but really just for like operational expenses. The money that it uses to buy jewelry like this comes from its endowment fund, which is essentially money from private donors. And yes, it's given to the Louvre for all the world to enjoy, but in a way, these things are still kind of owned by the world's wealthiest elite, that upper echelon. And the Louvre certainly hasn't bought everything it has on display. Quite a bit of it was straight up stolen. Think those Italian Renaissance masterpieces Napoleon stole. The Department of Egyptian Antiquities, how do you think that stuff got out of Egyptian tombs? Did they pay the dead pharaohs for it? Did they even pay Egypt for it? So it brings us to this ethical Mobius strip of, can you really steal something that was already stolen to begin with? Does it alter the severity of the crime? Should it impact our moral gut reaction to the theft? Should the world collectively mourn the loss of 8 pieces of France's prized crown jewel collection? Or should we rejoice just a little bit that the power imbalance that allowed for their existence has possibly shifted? Good for them. Thank you all so very much for listening to History Fix. I hope you found this story interesting and maybe you even learned something new. Be sure to follow my Instagram @HistoryFixPodcast to see some images that go along with this episode and to stay on top of new episodes as they drop. I'd also really appreciate it if you would rate and follow History Fix on whatever app you're using to listen, and help me spread the word by telling a few friends about it. That'll make it much easier to get your next fix. Information used in this episode was sourced from ArtNet, BBC, CBS News, ThoughtCo, and Wikipedia. As always, links to these sources can be found in the show notes.